So today we're going to be creating a rolling cube animation, and this is kind of difficult because in order to make something look like it's rolling on its corners, you have to essentially take your anchor points and move them. But in this case, we're almost going to be creating new anchor points, a lot of them on one object, so it looks like it's actually rotating and rolling on those corners. And so that's what we're going to be creating in this animation today. So the first thing we're going to do is take our objects and set them up so you have a really cool looking piece. Then we're going to go ahead and start parenting them so this whole system is going to work. Then to actually make it roll, we're going to be creating our anchor points on all the corners of our cube or whatever object you want to be using. Next, we're going to do some simple animation to get this thing to roll. We're going to add lighting, we're going to animate our shading, and we're going to be done. It's a really cool, straightforward tutorial, a lot of really cool things to learn here. So we'll get into that right after this quick shout out. Welcome to Real-Time Materials, a collection of customizable procedural materials compatible with Eevee and Cycles. Real-Time Materials are loaded with custom properties, giving you the freedom to change roughness, color, and all kinds of patterns. You can change the shape of wood, the direction of cloth weave, and the size of scratches, among many other parameters. Even if you already know how to make procedural materials, imagine the time you will save if you could apply those materials in one easy click. All right, so if you want to follow along, go ahead and just get whatever object you want to use. I'm using a crate model, but you can use a cube, anything that's kind of cubic that really shows you how to make this roll. So what you're going to need to do is go ahead and hit Shift A, get an empty, and use a cube. And then in my case, I'm going to hold down Control, bring it up, and then I'm going to hit S2. That's going to scale it by 2, and just make sure the bottom is right here. So I'm holding down Control to snap it. If you want to get your hands on this project file, it is going to be available on Patreon with the animated material and all of that stuff. So just go ahead and fit in. I'm using Control, and I'm duplicating everything so that it fits within my empty. And then I'm going to click on the empty, hit A, Control P for parent, object, and now they're all parented within this empty here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click it and title it cube. So here's the problem and why the cube animation is, the cube rolling animation is even something interesting enough to make a tutorial on. So here is an attempt of just rotating the cube on one anchor point. Notice how it's digging into the ground. So it starts on the flat, but then it digs into. How do you prevent that from happening? Well, that's going to be your anchor point. So I'm just going to remove this ground and delete those keyframes. So notice this little green dot, that is your anchor point. That is where it's going to rotate from. And for this to work, the anchor point needs to be here in the corner, and you can do that on different objects. But in this case, you actually need to create an anchor point on each of these corners in order for it to actually roll properly. So in this case, we're in a sense creating multiple anchor points for one object. We're using empties to do that. So you're going to go to empty, plane axis. I'm going to hold down Control and place one here. Now naming is very important in this situation. So this first empty, we're going to call it 1, hit Shift D, hold down Control, of course, so it snaps. 2, and I'm going to go ahead and put 1 on each of the corners. But what's very important here is each empty, each anchor point represents a rotation. So however many times you want this cube to roll, that's how many empties you want to have. So we're going to call this one number 5. And just for demonstration's sake, if you want this thing to roll 6 times rather than just once on each flat, I'll demonstrate that for you. So now let's go ahead and start parenting everything. It's very easy because these are stacked. I'm gonna hold down number 6, hold down Shift, click on cube, Control P, object, and then do that for each one. Click the one above it, hold down Shift, click the one below it, Control P, object, and I'm gonna do that on all of them until number 1 is left. So 1 to 2, Control P, object. And now we can just go ahead and expose all of these so we can kind of see what we're doing. So here is how the animation is going to work. Select number 1, and parent number 1 is controlling everything. Number 2 is controlling everything except 1. So here's how this is going to work. Right here on Y, type in 90, and then click number 2, type in 90, and it's going to rotate just like that, and we're going to animate it. I have found the animation speed that I actually really like is a rotation every 30 seconds. So I'm going to bring my low. So I'm just going to start here. Empty number 1, just keep your location at 0. That's going to help with the animation looping. So what we're going to do is click on empty number 1, go to make sure you are at frame number 1. Right here on the Y, click a keyframe, go to frame 30 and type in 90 and then add that keyframe and then click on number 2. Add a keyframe, go 30 frames over, which would be for me would be 60, 90 degrees there. And so we can just look at this already. It is animating and it's kind of slow, you know. So now we can just kind of preview that animation. You see it's doing this thing just like that. And so start at frame 60, click on number 3, keyframe, go to 90, and then 90 degrees here. So I'm going to do this on all 6 of my empties, adding an animation every 30 frames. All right, so I've added keyframes on all of them. So now you can see the cube is rolling on all of its axes because we're adding these new anchor points. Now we're technically not adding real anchor points. They're just empties with their own anchor point that's rotating on that one, controlling everything. It's this fun little domino effect. But now we've created our animation. Now for me, we're going to stop it at 120 because that's going to be all for loop. So we can see it's going to loop there, and we'll actually get it to loop better in just a minute. But now we have this situation all animated and set up. Now what we're going to do is just go ahead and add some lighting. So let's go ahead and build our scene. I'm going to get another cube, and I'm going to call this one floor, just so we don't get confused with our real cube. And let's just build this to however you want it to look. I'm going to scale this down like this. We're going to go ahead and get in a plane, RX90 on the plane. Bring it over like this and then scale it up. So now we have a simple scene that we can go ahead and start lighting. I'm going to add in a bevel modifier, Control A on that, and then add in some segments just like this. Now let's go to cycles to kind of preview this. So Shift A, I'm going to go ahead and get a light and put a point light right behind our cube here so we can get this really cool look. I'm going to put it there by hitting G and then bring up the brightness on it. And then we're also going to get in a area light. I'm going to hit G, bring it up here. I'm going to hit R twice to rotate it, give it a power of 1000. Bring that spread in till it just hits like right there and then scale up. So now you have this, and you can see it's pretty bright, so you can bring that power down till you like how it's looking, and you can kind of see this is a pretty nice looking scene so far. If you want to, you can also add in an HDRI. It's definitely not mandatory, but if you want to have, pull in one of your HDRIs from your scenes, I'm going to go ahead and use 0.3 on that, and you can add in kind of like a better version of the gray world, but I would keep it at the gray world if you just want to keep it there. Both of them look really good. Now what you can do is add in some shading. I'm going to hit Shift A first and get my camera. I'm going to hit Control Alt 0, snap that to view, and I'm going to click on my camera settings and go to orthographic, and then bring up my orthographic scale. So this is a pretty nice composition right here. Now let's go ahead and add a material. So I'm going to click on this object here, remove my old material, add a new one, and just pick kind of an orange texture. And then hold down Shift and select all of your objects. And then select the one with the new material at last, Control L, link materials. So now I'm going to show you how to animate the color change just to kind of wrap this up. So go to your preferences, and in the animation tab, go to a constant keyframe. Then hover over here, hit I, and then go right to when your object hits the ground, as soon as it hits the ground. So right there, it's going to be frame 30, which makes perfect sense. And then you can just go ahead and click this, add a color. So now you can see it changes colors. And then we'll go to frame 60 and then change the color again to something like this. Add that, and then 6, 7, 8, 9. So we need to go frame 90. And maybe we'll go for more of a blue like that. And then at the very end, it should change naturally. All right, cool. Now, how do we make this a really cool looping animation? It's very simple. So what you can do is go ahead and select all of these objects here, hit M and call it, anything. So I'm just going to call it it. And then now we have this whole collection here. So what you can do is hit Shift A, Collection Instance, and click on Collection, which you can also rename to Cube. Hold down Control. So right when it stops, right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, move that. And make sure that the original collection, anchor point number 1, is at a location of 0. That's very important to make this loop. Then I'm going to hit Shift D, 1, 2, 3, see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Shift D, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is making sure everything is exactly the same to be sure that this is going to loop seamlessly. We're probably going to need, actually we're probably good. Let's go ahead and press play and see if this is going to loop loop seamlessly. Nope, we need one more on the left. So let's go ahead and take this guy, hit Shift D, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we have a rolling cube seamless animation, and which just means now the colors are also going to look cool. So now it's going to change each time they move, but it's still going to loop seamlessly in the best way. And there you go. For your render settings, I'm going to keep it at 1920 by 1080, and then go to the camera icon on your light paths. Just hold it, click and drag, bring them down to 1, turn off reflective and refractive, and that's going to really speed up your render. I'm going to keep it at 300 samples. We're going to add some denoising data, set that up in compositing, and we are going to finish this up. So I'm going to get a viewer, bring that there. I'm going to hold down Shift and right click to merge these. We're going to get in a denoise, noise denormal, noise dealbedo. Let's just go ahead and render out one frame and see how it looks. So I just rendered out frame 93 for myself, and this looks really, really good. Last touch I would add is in the color management. Let's go here to high contrast, and we have a really cool animation. So when you're done, you're gonna have an animation that looks like this. Looks really awesome. What you can do is just go ahead and create your PNG sequence, or if you want Blender to compile a video for you, go ahead and do FFmpeg video, select your save location, encoding to MP4, medium quality to perceptually lossless, render animation, and you'll be all done. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned some stuff. This is a really cool, really fun loop. If you want to check out real-time materials or my Patreon, those are in the description. Really help support the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.